I want to hear cannons. Downfield, pull up, ball to the 5, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans does it again. Fire the cannons, Bucs.
It's first and goal. That's picked off. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Throws up with the head. Intercepted. 40. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 25. 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a live edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, my good buddy and co-host from BucsNation.com, Evan Wanish. We are not alone today. Joining us for the Week 7 game preview, it is a primetime edition of the game preview. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 4-2, going to be hosting one of the hottest teams in the NFL. Out of the AFC, former MVP Lamar Jackson and the 4-2 Ravens will come to town. Joining us on the show today, representing the Bleav in Ravens podcast, former Tampa Bay Buccaneer, former Baltimore Raven, Daniel Wilcox. His co-host Matt Trigger will be joining us later on in the show. But Daniel, pleasure to have you here and excited to get into this game. We were talking about it before we started the recording here. There is a lot of hype surrounding these matchups. And when you compare, really just both of these quarterbacks from the top of it, you're talking about two early season MVP contenders here. So you're looking at two offenses that really could light up a scoreboard.
Yeah, I love it. First of all, thanks, Rhett. Thanks, Evan, for having us on, man. I can't wait to Matt get a chance to jump on the show. But thank you guys so much for having us on and bringing you into your home show. And I'm looking forward to this episode, man. You're 100% right, Rhett. We got two MVP candidates right now that's going to battle out, and it's going to be a complete showdown, I think. I love the way that Baker is playing right now, playing with so much freaking passion and juice and energy, and it's so infectious. Like, his teammates get a chance to see that. It makes the defense play harder. It makes the offense play harder. It makes everybody want to run the ball even harder when your quarterback runs the ball the way that Baker has been running it. And I just love his aggressiveness, man. I'm so happy that Baker was able to find a home in Tampa. Tampa is my old stomping ground, so I miss Tampa, love Tampa. It's super warm. It used to always be 83 degrees down there. I used to have a blog for the Baltimore Ravens called the 83 Degrees blog, and so every time I thought about the perfect weather, I'm always thinking about Tampa Bay. So it's awesome to see my team go back down to Tampa and play against my old team, and I love that, man. And we are Bleav in the Ravens, so of course you know who I'm going for this week. Even though I bleed red and pewter just like everybody else in Tampa, I bleed purple like nobody else, man, up here in Baltimore. So I love it, man. Thanks, guys, for having me on.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you. We are excited to dive into this one. For Baltimore, they are fresh off of 4 wins in a row. Started the season 0-2. A lot of people were overreacting in the early part of the season. And the team that we expected in 2024 eventually came around to the tune of 4 straight wins. Now, they have been fairly balanced in their approach. They've got an offense led by, again, a former NFL MVP in Lamar Jackson, who has been playing really well so far to start this season. Their biggest free agent acquisition, being Derrick Henry at the running back position, has been just another level, a monster at running back. Leads the NFL in rushing right now among running backs. But, Evan, wanted to get your thoughts on how the Bucs fare coming into this thing, because it was a slow start for the Ravens. They were able to win some games and really build themselves up into a formidable force in the AFC through 4 games. But for Tampa Bay, win one, lose one, then you get a couple of really good performances under your belt against Denver, kind of, show up, play the way that they did, or against Detroit, show up and play the way that they did against Denver. You come back, you play really well against Philly, you fall in overtime to the Falcons, and then you look really good last week in an NFC South win over the New Orleans Saints. So, the Bucs have been playing a really good brand of football as well, but it feels like coming into this matchup, they have a lot more to prove here when you compare these two teams.
Yeah, they certainly do. And this is going to be, I would say, look, the Lions are a really, really good football team, right? And that was a big win on the road for the Bucs. But this is going to be a challenge, right? This is a 2-time MVP in Lamar Jackson, who is playing great football right now. It's funny, both these teams have actually had three straight games with 30 plus points scored. So that's why, the title of this episode involves, the word shootout. Like, this could be a shootout game. Both defenses have struggled to defend the pass, and both quarterbacks are playing some of their best football, of their careers. And actually, it is funny. Daniel Wilcox, obviously a Super Bowl champion with the Buccaneers. If many do not know, he did win the Super Bowl with the Buccaneers. He was on that 2002 team. That was actually the last time the Buccaneers have beaten the Baltimore Ravens, in 2002. So it has been a long losing streak for the Buccaneers against Baltimore. Hopefully they can get that figured out. But I do expect a lot of fireworks in this game, and both quarterbacks are playing really well. Utilizing Derrick Henry, on Baltimore side of things, they're really doing a good job of that. And I think that, Zay Flowers coming into his own as sort of a wide receiver one for Baltimore, right? He's been a real weapon for them. And obviously Baker Mayfield utilizing Chris Godwin. And now Bucky Irving, Sean Tucker, Rashad White kind of having this three-headed monster here at running back. So I do think both offenses are starting to flow, right? Are starting to gel at the right time. And I am very curious to see both these offenses go to work, because I think it could be a pretty good show for the Monday Night Football crowd.
Daniel, wanted to ask you about this Ravens offense. They come into this game fourth in scoring, averaging 29.5 points per game. First in total offense, 453.7 yards per game. They're moving the football. They're doing it well. Offensive coordinator Todd Monken, we're big fans of him on this show. Spent some time in Tampa Bay back with Dirk Cutter as head coach. So, we've seen him take an offense. Even if it's a team that doesn't win much, he can make a top 10 offense out of a lot of teams in the NFL. And I think he has unlocked another level to Lamar Jackson's pass game these last couple of seasons. They are hot to start the year. Their offense is playing well. They are a well-oiled machine. On top of that, we just mentioned Derrick Henry, how well he's been playing on top of Lamar Jackson, their ability to run all over these teams. Yeah. So when you look at strengths and weaknesses here on offense for Baltimore, how do you think they fare?
Well, honestly, I don't really feel like they have any major weaknesses. The only thing that they're struggling in right now, if I had to be honest, I think is the offensive line. You just got a young line. You got 3 new starters on the line. And we've been just working constantly, just trying to get these guys to start gelling. And over the last couple of weeks, you've seen them kind of put together a couple of games, 2 or 3 games that kind of make you feel like, okay, maybe we got something here. And the Ravens front office is absolutely phenomenal. And they just do a great job of recruiting. This is probably one of the deepest teams I think I've ever seen us have. It's built to make a run in the playoffs. It's built for a Super Bowl run. And I can't wait to see how it turns out for them. But you said it best, Rhett. They have been playing absolutely phenomenal when it comes to running the ball. Todd Monken has done a phenomenal job of just being patient and just trying to get to know his players. And that's what you're starting to see. You're starting to see the offense starting to finally click. Everybody's getting the ball, and you have to figure out numbers. We had to show a couple games back, and we kind of broke down, like, on average, how many reps you get per game on offense. You usually average about 60 to 65 reps. And when you start thinking about having a Derrick Henry, a Lamar Jackson, a Justice Hill, a Mark Andrews, a Isaiah Likely, a Zay Flowers, a Nelson Aguilar, Rashard Bateman, and then eventually we're going to get Keaton Mitchell back, our 4-2 speedy tailback that balled out last year before he got hurt and blew his knee out. So when you start thinking about you got 8 or 9 guys that's playing elite level football right now, how do you average out who's going to get the ball for 60 reps? If you get Derrick Henry 20 carries, there's only 40 reps left for everybody else. On average, you're going to get about 5 to 10 plays where quarterback hurries, bad snaps, balls batted down at the line of scrimmage, jump off sides. So you're going to lose about 10 of those reps to that. So that's 30 reps that are gone. You got 30 reps to divvy up between the next 6 or 7 guys. And that's crazy. You got to get Lamar the ball at least 10 times, So now you at 40. Now you got 20 reps to give everybody else, Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, and the rest of the crew, their reps. And it's just hard as the OC I think, to kind of to divvy that up and understand who's the primary guys when you got so much talent. And I think that's what you saw early on. Plus, nobody has a preseason anymore. None of these guys has played in preseason. So those first 3 or 4 games were like preseason games for us. And I kept trying to express, me and Matt was having these conversations every week on the show. And I was trying to express, like the importance for people. Hey man, pump your brakes, bro. These first 2 or 3 games kind of like preseason game. Let these guys get into some kind of rhythm. They haven't had any live action. Lamar hadn't been hit live since last season. And now you get a chance to to really get that vibe going and the understanding of who the Baltimore Ravens are and what their offense is going to look like for the remainder of the season. And I think we're just scratching the surface of how good they're going to truly be. And it's the same thing for our defense. When you look at our defensive side of the ball, and Matt's favorite guy on the defense right now is Travis Jones. He's balling out of control. And
Yes,
our
he
defensive
is.
side of the ball, we got a young DC, Zach Orr, former player. Love the fact that the Ravens are pulling guys up into the ranks. And he's right now installing his entire defense. And these guys are all new to everything that he's putting in. So you're seeing busted coverages every week. I hope to God we don't have any this week against Tampa. The last thing we need to do is give y'all some freebies, but every week we've given the team a free touchdown pretty much from a busted coverage. And I'm hoping that stuff is probably close to being cleaned up by now. I think the latter half of the season, you'll see exactly who our defense is. And the defense that we have right now in Baltimore is pretty close to that Super Bowl defense we had in Tampa. There's stars everywhere, man. You just don't know who's going to make a play, but somebody always going to make a play on that defense.
Taking a look ahead at Bucs versus Ravens on Monday Night Football, talking with our friends from the Bleav in Ravens podcast. Matt Trigger, the other half of the show, joins the podcast. Matt, we were just talking about this Ravens offense and the explosive start they have had to the 2024 season. You're matching up with Todd Bowles, and I think when any team goes into a matchup with Todd Bowles, the one thing that they hear about more than anything else is the blitz packages, right? These different schemes, these different defensive fronts that Todd Bowles is going to get creative with, and he's going to throw at, granted, a former NFL MVP in Lamar Jackson, but if you're not an experienced quarterback, he can still find ways to confuse you. Even guys who have been in the league for a couple of years will see some packages they haven't seen against Todd Bowles. He's a madman at times. But when you look at the weapons Baltimore does have, Bowles is going to lean on the blitz here. I think he's going to do more of the same. It's kind of his reputation now. How do you think Baltimore attacks that? How do they approach a Todd Bowles style defense here on Primetime?
They're going to definitely use that play action they've been using all year long. Daniel and I talk about this a lot on our show, where you're going to blitz Lamar to try to confuse him, but this Lamar is a different version than what we've seen in previous years. He picks up the blitz very well early on. Our offensive line is now going to be going into their 4th straight game, the same starting 5. We have 3 very good tight ends to utilize in the pass game. We got the quick pop pass game with Zay Flowers. So it's a little bit of a different situation where if you want to throw 8 or 9, in the box and you want to blitz 6 or 7, good luck, because you got Zay Flowers on the outside. You got Mark Andrews that can do damage down the seams. And then Isaiah Likely is a wide receiver that's listed as a tight end. So it's really pick your poison. Plus, you have Justice Hill in the pass game with out of the backfield. So there's a lot of different ways that they can attack this defense. I know that you guys like to blitz a lot. You guys have a very good blitzing scheme. I've had a chance to watch a couple of your games this year. So, yeah, that is worrisome, but this isn't the Lamar of 2019 or 2020 who struggled with the blitz. He's going to find the soft spot in the zone. Mark Andrews got going last week. Isaiah Likely still very present in this pass game. So, to me, if you want to blitz, that's fine. We're just going to run play action, or we're going to run heavy sets. We're going to run 2 tight end plus the fullback, and then one of these tight ends are going to get open in the soft spot of the zone coverages that are being left out there, when you might only have 1 or 2 guys over top, hit Zay on a quick slant or a pop pass, and then your defense is chasing number 4 45 yards down the field.
Yeah, we used to run a lot of that heavy package too. I agree with Matt a lot right there, because I feel like that heavy package kind of kills all that. If you go 3 tight ends and then you bring in Patrick Ricard and Derrick Henry to your heavy set, and then all your tight ends can run routes, they all can catch balls. Patrick Ricard can catch balls out the backfield, so can Derrick Henry. I mean, I go with that big package. You can bring who you want to bring. It's mano on mano. Let's see what you're gonna do. Yeah,
and I got to tell you, Evan, wanted to get your thoughts here too on this matchup in particular, but I feel like it's gonna be a big night for the Ravens tight ends. Isaiah Likely, you talked about the athleticism that he has, and Mark Andrews, he's been one of the better tight ends in the NFL. It's been a slow start for him a little bit in 2024, but he still has the talent. He still has that playmaking ability. And the Bucs, as daunting as some of these defensive looks can be, they have this uncanny ability of allowing the slowest guy on the field to be the most open. And I think the middle of the field in particular has been the biggest soft spot for Tampa Bay. KJ Britt has been a liability in coverage, and now one of your top cornerbacks, Jamel Dean, is potentially going to be missing this game. I think the Bucs going to rely a lot more on cover 2 here, Evan, but you're going to have to find a way to protect the middle of the field here, because I know to a certain degree Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, like, those guys are going to get theirs. I think statistically the Bucs have done okay against good rushers. They never let them take over the game, but I mean, you don't have to be the best quarterback in the league to find the open tight end just sitting, by himself 7 yards away. I think it could be a long night in that sense if the Bucs don't make some adjustments here.
Yeah, Red, I have a question for you. I'm sorry, Evan. Go ahead.
You're good, man. Go ahead.
Right. When you said that you guys have done okay with rushing, I mean, I checked this morning. You guys are giving up 114 a game.
Oh, well,
so
yeah. No. Hold on. Let me add some context to that. The Bucs have typically done okay against teams with feature rushers, I feel like. Saquon Barkley was hyped up on this Philly offense, and they did a decent job of neutralizing him. There have been matchups. I know last year when they played Derrick Henry, I know it was his last year with Tennessee, but they did a decent job of shutting him down and preventing him from doing much of anything effective during that game.
He was 1 of 1 up there, though. He's 1 of 7 here.
Yeah.
It can do damage. So it's a different dynamic. Plus, he leads the league in rushing at 704 yards with 8 touchdowns right now.
Yeah, I don't love it.
So I mean, look, they're gonna look to attack multiple ways, right? With Henry, with a lot of the weapons that you guys just mentioned. But yeah, the middle of the field is a spot where I expect the Ravens to try and exploit early and often, because it is a weak spot on this Tampa Bay defense, and the Bucs passing defense has been bad. I mean, I Bleav it's 29th in the NFL in terms of yards per game allowed, as in terms of passing yards per game allowed. So it has not been good, and I mean, they are going to be missing Jamel Dean in this one. It's going to be a matter of weeks, not really days, on when Jamel Dean's going to be back. It sounds like he's going to be out for an extended period of time. So, they're going to be down a corner. And the middle of the field got abused specifically by the Atlanta Falcons, right? Kirk Cousins really lived in the middle of the field, just tortured the Buccaneers there, and it was not pretty. So they're going to have to defend the middle of the field a little bit better. Mark Andrews, like you said, has gotten off to a slow start, but he still is one of the better tight ends in the NFL, and you could definitely see a big day for Mark Andrews here. It wouldn't shock me in the slightest if you see sort of that breakout game where you're like, oh, like, okay, like Mark Andrews is back, right? Like this is him, because the Buccaneers have struggled to defend that middle of the field, and typically, historically wise, I guess you could say, they have struggled to defend the tight end, at times, no matter whose defense it really is.
Daniel, I know you got to get out of here shortly, but wanted to get your thoughts on the trenches here, because I do think when we talk about all the weapons on Baltimore's offense, the trenches could be a matchup that Tampa Bay could potentially take advantage. I don't think this pass rush is going to do anything monumental here, but this is probably the first time all season the Bucs have been as close as they have been to this healthy along the defensive line. You got Kalijah Cansey back in the lineup, and one of the defensive coaches said this week that he's playing at full strength. He is back to 100%, which the Bucs have not had him at so far this season. And when he has been on the field, he is a force. We already know about defensive tackle Vita Vea, Polynesian power, I like to call him, 300-plus pounds there in the interior. Some other guys on this defensive line starting to heat up as well, but Daniel, you had kind of talked about the inexperience factor for this offensive line, maybe some retooling throughout the offense or throughout the offseason here along the offensive line for Baltimore. But your thoughts on this matchup and, ultimately your closing thoughts, because I know you got to get out of here soon as well.
Well, I mean, the offensive line has been a problem pretty much off and on all season. And it's not that we don't have great linemen. We have great linemen. We just don't have the chemistry. So the chemistry is starting to click, and it's starting to come right now. And things are starting to kind of turn the corner for those guys. And I want to continue to see that trend upward for our guys. Tampa has notoriously been known to have a very stout D-line. And you're right, Vita is a problem. He's a freaking man-child in the middle. The good thing about it, we got a guy in the middle that's pretty freaking good too. So I like him a lot. I'll take him against anybody in the league. As a rookie last year, he didn't give up any pass pressures at all, no sacks, anything like that. He's already started the year off good doing the exact same time in Tyler Linderbaum. So I continue to see that work good for us and continue to be better for us. The thing I didn't like early was more coaching, I think, than anything. And I had this conversation with Matt all the freaking time. Like, sometimes it's not always on the player. Sometimes there's some coaching things that are not being implemented. When you got a young line that's inexperienced, you have to do everything you can to help those guys out. There was nobody chipping these guys, and they was going out against all these 5-star pass rushers week in and week out. And Tampa is as loaded as anybody. And your DC, because your DC is so freaking talented, he reminds me a lot of Rex Ryan when I played, in Baltimore. Rex did a phenomenal job. Even Money Kiffin back in the day. Money Kiffin did a great job in Tampa when I was down there. But Rex did a great job of just confusing people. I was one of the people he confused. I'm on the other side of the ball, and I had to see our guys in practice every single day, and he would put 4 or 5 guys outside of me on the right side and end up only one of them would rush, and everybody else will fall back in coverage some kind of way, and then they will only rush 3, but somehow it's always a free rusher. The good thing about it is Baltimore's been seeing that stuff. They kind of invented that stuff. They've seen it for years, so that's the thing that doesn't worry me as much about going against Tampa. And even though Flores is doing a phenomenal job, Bowles is doing a phenomenal job down there. And I love that, man. I think that we'll continue to grow this week and continue to push forward, week in and week out. The sky's the limit for the Baltimore Ravens this year. And the thing that I think that we have going for us more than anybody else, we lost our O-line coach at the beginning of the year. So we're going to be playing on a little bit more emotion than what Tampa's going to play on, right? Then we lost a superstar, Jacoby Jones, early in the year. And I think those 2 guys alone, like that emotion will get you to finish a game. So if you've watched every single game this year, this is not a team that's going to tap. It's nothing you're going to do to make them tap. That we're built that way. We were born that way. We was raised that way from day one. And everybody that's been on this team, that's why we say to play like the Raven mantra going throughout the whole organization. Like we Bleav in the Raven. We truly do believe that we can win every single game, and there's no other team that's better than us. And I think the Ravens will come and they will show improve. I don't think the trenches will literally be that much of a problem this week, on either side of the ball. I think our D-line will hold their own. I think our offensive line will hold their own. And saying that, I feel like Tampa's going to do the same thing. It's just going to be the battle of who's going to fatigue and get tired fastest in this game. And I think if Tampa gets fatigued too early, it's going to be a long freaking night for Tampa, a long night, especially with Big Boy back there in the backfield. And, the good thing about what y'all said earlier about him being kind of shut down a little bit last year in Tennessee, great players remember that stuff. He remembered that. He remembered he didn't play well against y'all last year. So guess what he's going to try to do this year? He's going to try to kill Tampa. And he's going to tell everybody in the locker room, bro, I need this one. He's going to look left. He's going to look right, bro, I need this one. I only had 50 yards or 60 yards rushing last year on 20 carries. I need this one. So everybody, don't worry, bro, we got you. We're going to look at him right in his eye. We got you. We got your back. And that's how football players are. It's a brotherhood, man. And this locker room right here is probably one of the tightest locker rooms you're going to probably ever see. And every single thing that happens to them throughout this season will only make them stronger, only make them more angrier, and only going to piss them off. So from the referees, from the players talking crap, to old ladies walking up to Lamar saying you're going to lose, it's all this stuff adds up and builds up. And these guys, they feel it, they see it, and they're going to pour it on the field in Tampa. And I can't wait to see it, Now, as much as I love Tampa, because that's my old stomping grounds, I left Tampa with a bad taste in my mouth. I got cut by John Gruden and company, So when I came down to Tampa that next year, wearing that purple jersey, I couldn't wait to beat Tampa Bay, So it's another one of those weeks for me. I'm gonna be looking on Monday Night Football on prime time, and I'm expecting these boys to represent. When I talk about these boys, I'm talking about the Baltimore Ravens. I'm expecting for them to go down there and represent. At the same time, my best friend lives in Tampa. 2 of my best friends lives in Tampa still, and one of my teammates still down there. But a bunch of my teammates, Shelton Cross, Corey Ivy, they all still down there. So they call and ask me, was I coming to the game? I'm like, nah, bro, I ain't gonna make this one. But I love this, man. I love the fact that you guys are back in Tampa the way you are. I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job with your podcast, and we appreciate it. Matt and myself, we appreciate you guys having us on. And I do got to get out of here, so if there's one last question you guys got for me, and I'll say it real quick, I won't be long, and I'll get out of here.
Daniel, we appreciate your time, man. Just want to get your game picks and where people can find your content before you get out of here.
You can find us with Bleav in the Ravens. We're on every single podcast network out there, Apple, Spotify, you name it, all the way down the line. iHeartRadio, we're on all of them. And as far as the pick, I'm Raven till I die. I bleed purple. I still got some red in there that drop out from time to time, drip, drop, drip, drop. But at the end of the day, I bleed purple. But to all my Tampa fans down there, I love you guys. Next time I come down, I'll meet y'all at Mom's Venus, okay? And no Mom's Venus. Okay, no Mom's Venus. What's the one with the spaceship?
No, go 2001 across the street, way cleaner.
Oh yeah,
way
2001.
Yeah.
Okay, 2001. I'll meet y'all at 2001. I got the Ravens for this game. Ravens, I'm gonna say we'll score 38. I'm gonna say we're gonna hold Tampa Bay to, let's say, 21. 38-21. Ravens win. And big game from Lamar Jackson. Big game from Roquan Smith on the defensive side of the ball. And I think it's going to be a quarterback game. I think Baker Mayfield is going to do his thing. I think Lamar Jackson is going to do his thing, but I think we'll come out on top of it because of the defensive differences.
A lot of points on the scoreboard, says NFL veteran Daniel Wilcox. We appreciate your time, Daniel, and we will talk to you soon. We're going to dive into the second half of this game preview with Matt here.
Thank you guys for having me.
Appreciate you, sir. Have a
hold
good
us down.
night.
Hold us down, Matt. Bleav in the Ravens.
You know what? You know I will, man. You know I will.
All right, guys. See you later.
yeah.
All right, so
dude.
let's talk about the other side of the football for both of these teams here. The Buccaneers offense versus the Ravens defense. Now, we've given Baltimore a lot of credit today. It's only natural for us to get on here and talk about how well our quarterback has been playing. Baker Mayfield, who leads the NFL in passing touchdowns with 15, has had a career start to the season. I know 3 interceptions in the box score last week against New Orleans. You can look at the game tape. You can talk about it whichever way you want to. Maybe 2 of those weren't his fault. Maybe they were. Regardless, his stat line looks like this. 70.9% completion rating, 134 for 189 passing, 1,489 passing yards through the air, 15 tutties, 5 interceptions. He's also been effective on the ground this year. Maybe not a Lamar Jackson type runner, but he's been doing a pretty decent job with his legs whenever he has to. But looking at this matchup in particular, Matt, the Bucs have a couple of guys in this wide receiver room who, do a good job of distracting these defenses, right? Mike Evans, when he's available, can garner a lot of double team attention, but Chris Godwin is having a career season in 2024. Mike Evans, his status this week, kind of up in the air, has not practiced so far this week. So, the Bucs obviously going to be relying on Chris Godwin. Maybe not as much on the run game this week as they did last week, but the Bucs right now, aside from Chris Godwin, looking for another guy, I think, on this offense to step up this week. How do you look at this matchup here, Matt?
Well, first and foremost, I like Baker Mayfield. I didn't care for the Cleveland Browns version of Baker Mayfield, but the way they did him dirty on the way out, trading for Deshaun Watson, the fact that that's blown up in their face gives me warmth in my heart. But Baker Mayfield reminds me so much of Brett Favre, and it's the way that he has bounced around. He found a home. Now he is producing. He got paid. He's happy. He went through a little bit of a tough situation last year, bouncing around between the Panthers and the Rams a couple of years ago. But you guys showed faith in him. He's a good quarterback. He was the number 1 pick for a reason. He was the Heisman for he won the Heisman for a reason. He's not a slouch by any means. And your offense has a lot to do with that. You have a very good left tackle in Wirfs. You have a good, stout offensive line across the board for the most part. And when Mike Evans is on the field, he's going to, break Jerry Rice's all-time record for most consecutive 1,000-yard seasons probably this year. And you always got to account for him. And then Godwin's having a career year. Now, one of those guys are going to eat. You can't let both of them eat as the Ravens defense. You got to understand that they're going to give up chunk plays. Godwin's a monster in that slot. He's going to be matched up against Marlon Humphrey or Brandon Stevens for most of the game. If Mike Evans doesn't play and we can key on Godwin, that might spell trouble for you guys. I'm not going to say it's going to be a detriment where you're going to get yours. Our passing defense is very suspect. Marcus Williams is the worst rated free safety according to Pro Football Focus. Kyle Hamilton's more of a box safety, line of scrimmage guy, so he's going to be more of a outside linebacker ish type of player, which is what he always is anyway. Even though on the depth chart he's a strong safety, so there's going to be certain matchup issues. K. Dotton is a sneaky good tight end. I like him, but at the same time, I think Hamilton can cover him. Roquan can cover him. So there's going to be matchups all across this board where it's going to be, you know, that's like kind of what Daniel was alluding to before he got off the show is he's talking about who wears down first. I think it's going to be about who makes the biggest chunk, it's the most chunk plays in this game because both of these lines are evenly matched. So Baker's going to have a lot to do with that. He's cerebral this year. He's taking chances. He's finding his guys that are open. He looks more calm and collected. He knows, and he's also playing on the fact that he is locked into Tampa. You guys gave him a nice long-term extension, so he's not playing for his life. So he's now locked in, and there's no, am I going to be here? Where am I going to be next year? Mm-hmm. You know, he's your guy's signal caller for at least the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think an interesting part of this matchup as well. I mean, looking at the Bucs' efficiency on offense here, Evan, coming into this one, tied for second on scoring offense, averaging 29.7 points per game. You mentioned in their last 3 games, scoring 30-plus points. 9th in total offense, averaging 367.2 yards per game. Now, I think whatever offense can get off to the hotter start here is going to kind of have a benefit because when you look at how this game played out in 2022, I know we're talking about different rosters back then, right? This is the last year of the Tom Brady Bucs. They were kind of a shell of what they were in 2021. The offense especially couldn't get much of anything going. But a big factor in the Ravens winning that game was time of possession, Evan. Like, the Bucs defense could not get off of the field. Baltimore held on to the ball for 38 minutes in that game. I think for Tampa Bay, it's an interesting approach this week because you look at their efficiency numbers, you look at Baker Mayfield and all of these statistics, they're doing great passing the football. And even with the success they had last week against New Orleans, I would argue they're still a pass-first team. But Mike Evans' lack of availability, you don't entirely know if you have a wide receiver 3 who can step up in a full-time position yet, right? Jalen McMillan kind of still relying on him. Sterling Shepard has been fine, but I think you still need him to step up a little bit if he's going to be that guy this week on the offense. So what does the approach look like, Evan? Does Liam Cohen really kind of get stubborn-ish with the run game this week, expecting something to kind of trickle over from the magic we saw last week? He mentioned all 3 of those running backs getting playing time. Or are they going to count on Baker to come out here and sling this thing early, try and get up on the scoreboard the way that they have in the first quarter these last few weeks?
You know, playing against this Ravens defense, I think you kind of have to go with that, right? Because they've just been such a dominant force at defending the run, number 1 rush defense in the NFL right now. I just don't know if you're going to have that same success, right? And look, like the Bucs, it was a good game, right? It was a great game for the Buccaneers running the football last week, but what they have been this year hasn't been a great running football team, right? So I think they are improving, and I think last week was a step in the right direction. This week probably isn't the time, though, to test that out again. I think your best bet would be to try Aaron out. Yes, Mike Evans has not practiced. According to Rick Stroud, he is still expected to play. So he is still expected to play despite not practicing the past 2 days here. It's more of, I think, a pain management thing. He's listed on the injury report with a hamstring, which obviously we've seen Mike Evans deal with those before. Hopefully, but again, those are something that can linger a little bit, so you have to keep an eye on it. And he may be on a pitch count just like he was in New Orleans. Chris Godwin's been great. I think you'd have to rely on him, but I think the running backs would best be utilized in the passing game in this one. I just don't see how you're going to have much success on the ground in this game against this Ravens front, which has been so good in the first 6 games. So I would think that your game plan is probably best served to put the ball in Baker Mayfield's hands. And it's a good point that Matt made about, the contract, right? You can tell he's a bit more comfortable, a bit more confident in his abilities now because of that contract. He has that security. He doesn't have to wonder where he's going to be next year, right? Like even last year, he was still on a 1-year deal. You don't exactly know, like, yeah, he's playing well in Tampa and maybe found a home, but who knew, right? You weren't really sure. So I do think that helps too. And I think you got to put the ball in his hands consistently. And I think they are going to do that. Whether it works or not, we'll see. But I think that's probably what the game plan is going to be.
Yeah, John Harbaugh, his defense right now giving up 275.7 yards per game through the air, second worst in the NFL for pass defense when it comes to the Baltimore Ravens. I think it's going to have to be another big week for Baker. He's going to have to continue to take care of the football. I know last week was kind of an anomaly. Again, 2 of those interceptions, that shit only happens when they play New Orleans. I don't know what it is. I don't know what kind of voodoo they do in Little Caesar Superdome before the start of that game, but it only happens against Tampa Bay. I think, a big key for Baker this week, staying poised, staying calm in the pocket, trusting his offensive line to take care of him. I mean, hopefully Graham Barton back in the lineup this week at center. We'll have to see how that ends up shaking out. But those guys are going to have to be solid in pass protection because, you're not facing any slouches on that defensive line for Baltimore. But if you give Baker time in the pocket, I think this week could be a good week. But I will say this as well, Evan. We're talking about the best run defense in the NFL here with the Ravens, but I still think Liam Cohen shouldn't be scared of the run game.
I think they're going to try.
Right.
I don't think they're going to just completely, have Baker Mayfield throw the ball 50 times. I think they're going to give it an effort. I just don't know how good that effort's going to turn out.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Matt, wanted to get your thoughts here as we start to wrap this thing up. Looking a little more at this Baltimore Ravens defense. Some of the matchups we had already talked about, wide receiver Mike Evans and Chris Godwin garnering attention. Now, the Buccaneers do have a couple of shifty running backs in Bucky Irving. Sean Tucker, still yet to be determined. I know he had that huge breakout game last week, but consistency is key in the NFL. And then I think this could be an important week for Rachaad White getting back in the lineup, depending on how healthy he is. Maybe he sees a lot of those check down receptions from Baker Mayfield, and he's able to put up a big stat line. But Matt, when you look at this defense for Baltimore, are there any matchups in particular that you kind of circle and highlight coming into this week that you think could favor Baltimore here on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah. I would be facetious if I said it was the cornerbacks versus Godwin and Evans, but our pass defense is putrid right now, and there's no other way to really describe it. But I'm curious to see how your running backs play a factor into the passing game with the middle part of our defense. We have a very good defensive line and edge rushers and guys that set the edge. So it's going to be relatively hard to get to the outside. Most teams don't really fare too well getting to the outside against us in terms of running the ball with David Ojabo, Odafe Owe, and Kyle Van Noy, who's found the fountain of youth this year, playing incredibly well. But the matchup I think that we favor in is the group of Roquan Smith, Trenton Simpson, and Kyle Hamilton against your backfield in terms of pass matchups. Trenton Simpson's a very fast, very athletic, young outside linebacker. Kyle Hamilton is probably the most sure open field tackler in the NFL. And I'm not trying to say that because he's a Raven, but if you look at tape,
he's very good.
the guy doesn't miss anything in the open field. He's a screen pass, wedge busting kind of guy. He's not afraid to get down and dirty. He looks like a middle linebacker out there playing safety, and he can cover pretty much anybody on a football field, which is an incredible thing to have. And I think that's a matchup that favors us, where Roquan Smith and Trenton Simpson and Kyle Hamilton should be able to relatively lock down the middle of the field and the flats the way that they have been all year long.
Yeah, I think, Liam Cohen, again, this passing offense, a big factor of that has also been Baker's ability to get rid of the ball quickly, right? The Bucs haven't taken quite as many deep shots this year. We talked about it in our midweek show. We pointed out the lack of deep shots to Mike Evans in particular. But when you look at a lot of the yardage, 2 of those touchdowns last week were 50-plus yard completions, with 45-plus of those yards being yards after the catch, Evan. Chris Godwin, he has been a stud with yards after the catch. Rachaad White has taken, some of those quick looks to the house before. So I think for Tampa Bay this week, again, quick looks, Baker Mayfield taking care of the football, high percentage looks, but a hot start, I would say, to put the cherry on top of all of that. We can say anything we want about this offense, but if they're playing from behind, I'm curious about the shape that this defense is going to be in by the time that second half rolls around. I think the biggest key for Tampa Bay in this game is getting their defense off of the field and preventing Baltimore from being in a position to just control the game clock. Because when you have a run game that's as effective as the Ravens have, you can control the pace of the game. Even when you're up a touchdown, 10 points, things can get out of hand quickly when you can milk 8 or 9 minutes on a drive. But Evan, some final thoughts here before we get into some score predictions. Bucs versus Ravens, Monday Night Football. Tampa Bay's first game back in Raymond James Stadium since Hurricane Milton. So the city of Tampa got the game ball from the Bucs Saints game last week, but it's their first time back on their home turf since they were displaced, had to practice out of town for a couple of weeks as well. So there's a lot on the line for both of these teams this week.
Yeah, there certainly is. Two teams that are, looking at 4-2 records right now. Baltimore Ravens, probably the hottest team in the NFL right now. Winners of 4 straight after an 0-2 start, really did a nice job of pulling themselves out. I'm excited to watch the game. I think there's a lot of talent on both sides of the ball for both teams, and I think this is a really good game. I'm a big fan of Lamar Jackson. I always like watching him play. So, really am looking forward to watching it. And I also think there's going to be a lot of scoring. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of plays to be talked about, good or bad, in this game. So. I do think that, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. This is only the second AFC team that the Buccaneers have played so far this year. The first one didn't go so well. The first one was against the Denver Broncos. So hopefully a little bit of a better result. If you're going to lose, maybe make it a little bit closer, right? Put a better performance out there, but. Yeah, we will see. But yeah, the Buccaneers looking to, this start really of a tough 4-game stretch, right? A really tough 4-game stretch where you got Baltimore now, Atlanta, then you travel to Kansas City and then play San Francisco. So a really tough 4-game stretch, and hopefully they can come out of this, coming out to the bye week of week 11, still with their own 2 feet basically.
And it's a shame about the Broncos too, because you love to see the Saints get beat down in the fashion they did on Thursday Night Football, but I mean, the Bucs made Bo Nix look great, and he looked awful last night. He was the first quarterback I've ever seen somehow miss a wide open tight end and wide receiver. He threw the ball between them, and the Bucs made him look like John freaking Elway out there. So that is definitely a game that you're going to want back. But Matt, getting your final thoughts on this matchup ahead of Monday Night Football. What is on the line here for Baltimore if they lose this game? And what is your score prediction here for Primetime?
One of those games that we need to kind of lock down and get a win just to maintain our momentum and our steam. We started off 0-2. A lot of Baltimore Ravens fans were on the ledge after that Las Vegas game. We've continuously gotten better each week, and we beat a couple of very good football teams by a lot of points. And we've eked out a couple close wins as well in that stretch. So I think this means a lot to the Ravens to keep on with the momentum for the rest of the year. We have 2 very tough stretches later in the year, guys, where we play 3 games in 14 days, and I believe we play another 3-game stretch in 11 days. Mm-hmm. And so there's going to be a lot of tough football games that we're going to have to overcome. So getting this win, if we happen to drop one of those later on in the year due to pure exhaustion or just injuries mount up or anything like that, this might be one of those wins that we can look back on and say, hey, this kind of saved us in December and January. So if we do lose, which I don't think we will, it would be debilitating to us in the long run once we hit those games. So we have to be pretty much perfect the rest of the way out for the rest of the year, and that's a big ask. So, but I do think we end up winning this game. I predicted it on our show last night. I do think the Ravens win 42-21. High scoring game. I think the defense makes a couple turnovers after the game that Mayfield had last week. We know Baker Mayfield better than most teams do that you guys see on your schedule. We have, I think the perfect matchup in this situation with you guys giving up 114 per game on the ground. Derrick Henry's averaging almost 120 on the ground, and we lead the league in most yards gained before contact with running backs at almost 4 yards a carry. So the perfect defense to your offense is our offense staying on the field. So if we can get these long drives that we're used to having, and we can keep Baker Mayfield off the field for extended period of time, and he doesn't start to feel himself, because when he feels himself, he's a different quarterback. And I'm not scared to admit that. I watched Baker Mayfield play pretty much since he came into the league. So yeah, I do Bleav that we're going to pull this out. I think Lamar has another 4-touchdown game. I think Derek gets 2 on the ground, and that's how we go from here. It's not to be. I'm not even here to talk trash to you guys about it, but that's how much confidence I got in this offense. This offense is getting better every week, and we're seeing things now added into this offense that we didn't see the week before. And I Bleav Derrick Henry maintains his momentum against a weak run defense, and he makes you guys pay on the ground, because it's priming up to be that type of game.
Yeah, I think the Bucs are going to have to play a complete game here. 51 points against New Orleans last week. It's all fine and dandy. Second most points in franchise history, but it wasn't a complete game. The reason the Saints were in that game to begin with was because of a complete and utter collapse by the Buccaneers in the second quarter. And, they had to catch up with themselves to ultimately win that game. And they did a great job, completely goose-egged the Saints in the second half there. But regardless, that's not going to fly against better teams in the NFL. The Saints are not a good team in the NFL. The Ravens are among one of the best. So tackling has to be better. The Bucs have to play a complete game. They have to protect their quarterback. All the things that we have talked about and all the things that they have done well up until this point of the season, they got to fucking do it great on Monday Night Football, right? It's a primetime stage against one of the best teams that the AFC has to offer. You're going to need to bring your A game. The Bucs have scored 30-plus points for the last 3 weeks, and I think that trend will continue. I have got a very competitive football game, and to be honest with you, this Bucs team has had a habit so far of exceeding our expectations. Evan and I have never been the type to go on our podcast and like blow smoke up people's ass. We always try to be as what's the word I'm looking for? As neutral as we possibly can. Like, obviously we're a little biased. We're lifelong Bucs fans, but if the team sucks, we're going to tell you the team sucks. With that being said, this Bucs team between last year and even so far this season, shitting the bed against the Broncos was still inexcusable, and it to this day leaves a sour taste in my mouth, and I'm going to put that on Todd Bowles each and every time. But even since that game, the Bucs have exceeded my expectations. I think they exceed my expectations on Monday night. I think they win a very close game. Money Mac from 44 yards, right hash, 31-30, your final score. I think Baker leads the Buccaneers on a game-winning drive, and Chase McLaughlin is able to get the job done. A man can dream, can he? Regardless of that storybook ending, I do have the Buccaneers winning this game. The Bucs are in the middle of a nightmare stretch here on their schedule, Evan, and I think they're going to get a surprising win one of these weeks, whether it's KC or Baltimore. I kind of like their chances here. What are you thinking for this game?
It's going to be a challenge, obviously, right? I mean, I think this is, again, one of the hottest teams in the NFL. But eventually, you can't win every single game, right? If you're Baltimore, you've won 4 straight, but winning 5, winning 6, winning 7 straight, like that's difficult to do in the NFL week after week. I do think that, look, like the Ravens are. I think the Ravens are the best team the Bucs have played so far.
Yeah.
I think the Ravens are probably better than the Lions. That Lions game was on the road. The Buccaneers were very banged up in that game. It was a massive road win. But this is going to be a whole nother challenge. And you got Lamar Jackson, who's playing great football, Derrick Henry playing great football, and that offense is clicking. Again, like I said, I still fully expect this game to be very high scoring, though. I do. If you guys watch Betting the Bucs, I took the full game over. I think I took both quarterbacks passing yards over. I just think there's going to be a lot of yards, a lot of points in this game. I just don't see these defenses coming up with the answers as quickly as they need to in order to stop these offenses. However, I do think the Buccaneers probably lose this game. I'm going to say 31-24 Baltimore. So a 1-score game. The Ravens have actually only had one game this year that wasn't decided by 1 score. That was the 35-10 win against the Bills. Now, they did have a massive lead against the Cowboys, led up a little bit, ended up winning that game by 1 score. The Bengals game was freaking wild. And then, the Commanders, they had a 2-score lead there, let up a little bit, but still got the W. Kansas City game, right? Heartbreaker there at the end. They almost tie it. So even their losses, right? Their losses are by a combined 10 points. So they played in some close games this year. I think it's going to be another close game. But I think the Bucs come up just a tad bit short here against the football team that look like the Bucs dropped this game. It's not the end of the world. Like sometimes, sometimes one of the better teams in the NFL comes into your house and just beats you, right? But I think it's going to be very competitive, back and forth game, and I just think the Ravens offense maybe makes one more play than the Buccaneers defense, can grab.
It's going to be fireworks regardless, and hopefully some cannon fire mixed in there as well. Monday Night Football from Raymond James Stadium to wrap up Week 7. I think it's a doubleheader too.
Yes.
What's the other game?
I don't remember what the other game. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, who cares?
I don't remember what the other game is.
Nobody's watching that crap. Matt, want to thank you for your time, my friend. Appreciate you jumping on and giving us your insight, and looking forward to an exciting game. For the people who are not already familiar, where can they find you and your content?
You can find me on the Bleav in Ravens podcast with Daniel Wilcox, who was with us on the show earlier. We're on the Bleav network. And you can find us on social media at Coach Wilcox for Daniel. And for me, that's on Twitter or X. And then for me, it's a BWATB podcast. We are always active on social media. We just, shameless plug, we just had Jameel McClain on last night, the director of player engagement for the Ravens. And Bart Scott came on the second show last night. We just released that at 4:00 today. So if you guys want to check out a hilarious interview with Bart Scott, that's probably one of the funniest hours of my life I've ever spent on camera. So, thank you guys for having me. I'm looking forward to a really exciting football game, this coming Monday night. I love watching Lamar in prime time. So it should be a good one, guys. After this game, good luck the rest of the year.
Absolutely, Matt. We appreciate you again. And listen, it's really weird talking about MVP candidates and especially Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the same conversation. And I don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket here, but I do think it is exciting just the level of play that both of these quarterbacks have had so far this season and the level of hype surrounding this matchup. It was a make or break moment for the Bucs in 2022. It was Thursday Night Football. I think it was around the same time of year too, wasn't it, Evan? It was Week 7 or Week 8. I think that matchup
I think it was Week 8.
It was going into that game, like that was kind of the last hope people had for the Bucs to be decent with Tom Brady that year, and they just weren't, right? I think Brady had an interception or two that game. Really wasn't his strongest performance, and I just think that the way that the year has gone for both of these teams in 2024, there's a lot to be excited about. These are going to be some decent teams down the stretch. And Matt, just like you said, on the other side of this thing, good luck the rest of the way. But Monday Night Football on the other side of this thing, ladies and gentlemen, we will be live with you, win, lose, or draw, right here, youtube.com/cannonfirepodcast. It's going to be a late night. We're going to do it again here in a couple of weeks. Bucs play on Monday Night Football in 2 weeks from now. I hate it, but we do it for you. Follow the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And, of course, Buccaneer news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram. Find him on Twitter at EvanNFL and check out his written work at BucsNation.com. You got anything to prep the people for the game this week?
Yeah, going to have X Factor coming out, which is basically, the one player on either side of the ball who is going to be the most important player in order for the Buccaneers to secure a victory. So then after the game, going to have the post-game reactions of what people were saying on social media. So stay tuned to Bucs Nation for that.
Last but not least, you can find myself Instagram and Twitter at Redicus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. Thank you once again to Matt Trigger and Daniel Wilcox from Bleav in Ravens for jumping on the show with us this week. Check out their content, find them on Twitter, and all of that good stuff. Thank you to the Bleav Podcasting Network and all of our sponsors today, Autograph.io and, of course, BetOnline.ag. I'm your host, Rhett Matthews, signing off from my co-host, Evan Wanish, and our friends from Bleav in Ravens. We will talk to you live, youtube.com/cannonfirepodcast, Monday night after the game. Be there or be square, I guess. It'll be really late at night, and I keep thinking about that. So I'm going to think about that. Until then, hopefully we see an entertaining game. We'll talk to you next time. Until then, and as always, thank you for listening. And go Bucs.